Critics loved it in the 90s, designers adore it today. It crystallized the concepts and set the standard of an entire genre, all in one breath. There's much that can be, and has been said about it. Its aesthetic, its music, its puzzles, its tone. Everything pieces together to create this downright delectable atmosphere. Its isolating, lonely, desolate atmosphere. You feel absolutely abandoned and entirely unaided on your journey, forced to figure things out and fend for yourself. But are you? Super Metroid is a beautiful experience, and if you haven't played it yet, I highly recommend you pick up a copy and give it a shot right now, because I might give away a couple of the neat surprises that this game has in store for new players. Don't worry though, because there's still plenty I won't touch on. So with that out of the way, let's get to it. This game does an insanely good job of making the player feel completely alone and isolated, and it goes to great lengths to preserve this lonely atmosphere, which is no small feat considering that throughout the entire game, the designers are taking the player by the hand and gently guiding them through it. But they do it so well and so subtly that most players never even notice. So the game starts out with Samus taking the player up to speed on the status quo. She's a bounty hunter who came across a space pirate named Mother Brain. Mother Brain was an alright dude, save for the fact that she planned to use the Metroids to take over the entire galaxy, of course. So Samus figured it'd be a pretty good idea to, totally freaking kill Mother Brain with a crap ton of missiles. It still has brains on it. Not satisfied enough with her own bountitude, Samus takes it upon herself to visit the Metroid's home planet and completely exterminate every single one of those levitating life suckers except for one, which she hands over to scientists on a space colony. Because not only is she a bangin' bounty hunter, but she's a philanthropist to boot. So after saving the entire galaxy or some such, she's on her way out the door when suddenly that same space colony sends a distress signal her way. She throws her spaceship in reverse and decides to check it out. And this is where the genius begins. It throws the player in a vertical shaft where they have no idea what to expect as they descend. This means that players are likely going to take things a little slow and not just jump in and hope for the best. The slow and careful pace gives the player time to get their bearings, which means that they'll notice this mini-map in the upper right-hand corner as it begins to fill itself out as they make their descent. After reaching the bottom, the player goes right, and as they do so, they have to jump over these tiny steps that the designers have placed in their way. These steps are here to help the player get familiar with the jump physics, which feel a little odd before you get used to them. At this point, the player is probably feeling a little cozy as they haven't seen an enemy yet, and they've just been having fun front flipping around everywhere. So the designers throw a curveball and have the player discover a bunch of dead bodies covered in blood. Bodies that were alive and sciencing just fine not 5 minutes earlier during the opening. So things just got real. It looks like that little Metroid might have escaped and violently murdered all those researchers. No pressure. You go through another corridor and... It's the Metroid! Shoot it! Huh? What is that? Shoot it! I'm glad that's over. Self-destruct? You gotta be kidding me! And so the first enemy is a boss fight, followed by an intense escape scene. Even Mario has to start out with a tiny Goomba. This game does not mess around. Not only does this establish a boatload of tension, but it also teaches the player a bunch of lessons. 1. Never get too cozy. We will throw a boss at you 3 minutes into the game. Thug life, get on our level. 2. You can fire in 8 directions. During the opening, the game clearly shows Samus pointing her gun diagonally, so after seeing this, the player might instinctually do the same when this boss first takes flight. This boss, his name is Ridley by the way, say hi, his attacks are specifically designed to teach a player how to effectively control Samus during a fight. How to dodge, how to shoot, how to dodge and shoot. And this ties into the third lesson. 3. How to platform. After this fight, the escape segment makes sure that the player knows how to control Samus properly, as they can't continue until they are able to escape the colony before it explodes. This isn't an incredibly hard challenge by any stretch, but whether the player does it on their first try or the fourth, it creates tension and promotes mastery. So we're 5 minutes into the game and the player already knows how to platform and fight with the best of them. They've also gotten a handle on the minimap and the entire tone of the experience has been set. All of this, and there hasn't even been a single text box or speech bubble. The player found it out on their own because the space colony is specifically designed for them to learn these concepts. This wordless way of showing the player what to do pretty much permeates the entire game, and it's handled incredibly well. Like here, the player is exploring when they stumble upon a huge clump of enemies that take quite a few shots to kill. The next room is filled with a bunch of enemies whom the player can't kill at all. But if the player presses onward, they find a new item called the plasma beam. Now they could just bog the experience down by telling the player verbatim what the plasma beam does, but that's not how Samus rolls. They instead have the player learn by doing. After getting this new beam, the player will naturally want to try it out by shooting at these once invincible enemies. And they discover that, yeah, this beam can totally hurt them now. Sweet. Then, to exit this area, they have to go back to the room with that weird clump of enemies. The player shoots at the clump, and look, these enemies are way easier to kill because the plasma beam goes through and hits all of them at once, as opposed to doing it one by one, like the old gun did. Here, there is no need to pin the player down with long-winded explanations. A player is invariably going to be curious about a new item, so the developers just had to create the proper conditions that gave the player an organic explanation of this beam's properties. It keeps the player immersed in the experience, and it demonstrates some pretty skilled craftsmanship on the designer's part. They didn't need to use any of this. Oh no, this video is similar enough as is. The trolls don't need any more ammo. And before you guys roll me in the comments, I am aware that there are these small text boxes that pop up whenever Samus gets a new item, but this just tells the player which buttons to push in order to select the item, as opposed to telling the player every enemy this item affects and every circumstance this item can be used. These wordless tutorials would be absolutely useless if a player had no clue how to use the item in the first place. This game's heavy show-don't-tell mentality also helps to cement different things within the mind of the player. Take this for example. While players are exploring, they might come across this room. What is that? I haven't seen anything like it. Judging by the map, it looks like it's an entrance, but what the Franz Joseph Haydn is that? Why can't I jump that high? I want to know what's in there. I want to be in you. After trying and failing to jump up there, the player leaves this room behind and goes about their business. After a while, they stumble into this room, which, oh no, they can't get out. No worries though, because this ball contains the high jump boots. Now they can jump more than high enough to make their escape, which begs the question, were there any other areas I've seen that were too high? Oh, this guy, I'm totally going to find out what's in you. So, sure enough, they go back to the room and find that these new boots can jump high enough. And the peasants rejoice. It seems like a very simple and straightforward scenario, but that's the genius of it. The designers cemented this door in the player's mind without using any text or dialogue. They made the door look bizarre and odd, which instilled the player with a sense of curiosity. And when the player just could not manage to reach it, they had to leave with a nagging feeling of dissatisfaction. Then, later on, when the player finds the boots, the developers used the level design itself as a reminder. Hey, remember the other time when you couldn't jump high enough? They were able to tease, remind, and pay the player off without using a single line of text on screen. It's amazing, and most players don't even think about it because it's done with such subtlety. The designers were able to gently nudge the player while still leaving more than enough room to let them feel empowered. This is game design, and it's an incredibly hard balance to achieve. If the designers stopped right here, the game would be good. But they didn't. They went further and made this game great. Say you're at the end of the game, you have hundreds of missiles, every health upgrade, and you just beat the boss. The credits roll and 75% completion? What? Not only is this game great on a first playthrough, but it's also just as good on subsequent playthroughs because it challenges and rewards the player for beating it faster and finding more items. Whether you're just a casual, a completionist, or a speedrunner, this game has goodies for players of all sorts. For example, aside from all the hidden power-ups, of which there are many, there are also a few secret skills that the designers put in this game. You don't have to know about any of them in order to beat the game. However, if you do find out about them, they can make subsequent playthroughs incredibly fun, because you can use them to access certain areas and items sooner than you ordinarily could. This opens up new layers of experimentation and exploration and keeps the game fresh for veteran players. Say it's my second playthrough and I come across this room again. Now I'm a seasoned Metroid vet, and I know how to bomb hop like a pro. Boom, I could have gotten up here without the boots all along and I didn't even know it. How awesome is that? Most games would catch this sort of thing during playtesting and do something to discourage it, like throw an invisible wall in. But the designers realized that experimentation and exploration are the lifeblood of this game. So they said, oh hey, cool, let's just design around it. So they went ahead and purposefully designed areas and items that can be reached several different ways, with some ways being much more obvious than others. In design, this is called perceptible and hidden affordance. So first-time players might do the obvious or perceptible thing, while veteran players might have fun and try to do the less obvious or hidden thing. This makes things easy and accessible for new players, but still leaves possibilities and discoveries open for vets. And no, none of this is by accident. If you read any of the staff interviews or even play the game, it's pretty obvious that these guys knew exactly what they were doing, and they went to great lengths to do it. During the last few months of development, the team of 15 people who worked on this game had to slave away around the clock to get it out on time. Often they chose not to go home at all and instead opted to just sleep at the office. No joke, these guys are like Swindon, they're finishers. Seriously though, I've only just scraped the surface of the layers upon layers of genius that this game has to offer. This game finds ways to communicate ideas and teach the player how to play through the level design itself, while also leaving room for older players to experiment. It's just a fascinating study in game design and perhaps one of the most analyzed and beloved games from the 16-bit era. If you've never played it, you owe it to yourself to pick it up and try it out, because for a sci-fi game, there's definitely a lot of magic happening here. Hey guys, Ronnie Edwards here.
Your intro made me want to die.
My buddies Matt, Pat, and Gerard the Completionist just made an
Ultra Epic Omega Crossover Video
that you can watch over here.
Yeah, I already saw it. It was way better than this crap. I was just playing Metal Gear Solid 4. You sound like Otacon.
Metal Gear Solid 4, I love that movie!
Dude, that joke was old like 4 years ago.